Howdy folks, thanks for joining me in the brewery. Big afternoon ahead of me. I think this one's, I think a few people are probably a bit keen on this one. I've been pretty keen on this one myself. The Ben Spoke Crankshaft clone, my version, along with two versions that have been sent to me by Clint who has reached out to me via the Facebook pages. He's been brewing a few attempts at the crankshaft himself. So after a bit of chatting about the recipes, he's decided to send me some of his so we can compare, because he's done some variations on the straight recipe, and between the three and the 1 can of the real deal, we can hopefully work out where these where these clones recipes sit and whether they're worth doing, or what maybe might just be needed to them to sort of maybe get them in the right spot. So I'm going to pour this off a couple of glasses here, and while I do that, big shout out to Little John's Patreons. Guys, thank you for your, as always, for the support of the channel. It's that support which allows Little John to play around with different recipes and things. Now, I want to keep enough of this so I can get a hydro sample, just so we can sort of have a look at where the real deal sits gravity wise, because obviously that's going to give a pretty good indication of where your starting gravity should be. So I'll better keep that bit there for that. So cheers to the subscribers of the channel. If you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button down there. That way you don't miss any videos when they come up. So this is the first of Clint's brews. Okay, there's a good bit of fizz in there. This is his number 3 brew. Now, Clint has brewed his beer off he was following, initially he said he was following Stas Brewing's recipe. Stas himself, I've watched the video where he's done the tasting on the brew he did, and he was following initially Pig-Den's recipe with a little bit of, with some changes. Now Pig-Den's recipe is the recipe that I've followed. Now this recipe is available on Brewfather. I will put links down the bottom to all the recipes that I do refer to in the video. I want to get these just out of the way because they're blocking me light and I'm not really getting a good look at the colour. Now I don't know how the colour is going to portray from that side, but straight up I'm going to put mine at a couple of shades darker, which is interesting because on paper this is the same colour as Clint's recipe comes up at, but there is a bit of a difference there. And that's, so my recipe is at 14, his is at 14. So first thing I want to do is I want to focus on this version, and because this is the beer I brewed. Now listen, this is taken from looking at a few different recipes. So there's a few options. I made a few minor adjustments. As in, I looked at Pig-Den's actual brew. Now I've got a few of them sitting here, so I'm going to confuse myself getting the right one. And I basically played around to get the malts into what I wanted. So first up, I see she's fairly gold. Bloody colour's not great. The light's not even great, but it is definitely. It's not much, but it's a couple of shades darker. Got a nice carb. She's got a nice head. Okay. There's a little more lighter stone fruit on that. Not a lighter hop nose, but the actual nose, the actual smell itself is a lighter. Okay. Anyway, let's have a taste of this Bella. I was worried when I first bottled this. I was worried that it had oxidised because it did seem to be quite a bit darker than what the recipe had said. Yeah, there's definitely some tight little there, which is really disappointing. Maybe not even diacetyl, but there's an it could be. I was concerned on the initial brew that I had potentially underpitched. The yeast was White Label California Ale, and I wasn't convinced that I'd built the starter up enough. But she fermented alright, so don't know. So that's the real deal, and there is certainly similarities between the two. Yeah, I think if you can get beyond that, just that little bit of weird little fermentation bloody character there, I think there's not a lot of difference. The crankshaft, according to the bent spoke recipe sheet, now this is directly from bent spoke in Braddon, 35 IBU. This brew came in at 36. 5.8%, I think. Where'd we end up at? I haven't got my final recipe open. I've only got the actual original recipe. You do all this shit, think you're prepared, and then not quite. Yep. We finished at 5.8%, so bang on the ABV. So from that point, yeah, we've got a thumbs up. Final gravity of 1010, started at 1054. Yeah, and I'm thinking that take that weird little bit of fermentation stress out of that, and I think that's fairly close. Yeah, I thought I'd gotten rid of that note, and I've gotten rid of a lot of what was there. It's certainly still sitting there. Let's have a look at these two from Clint. Now these are looking much closer for colour, no doubt about that. That's pretty much spot on. Now, again, he comes up at 14 EBC on the recipe. Doesn't say. I don't have a number for the colour for the actual crankshaft, but they are very, very close. Very close indeed. The two versions. Okay. There's not much nose on that. That's very, very, very restrained. Now, Clint has told me that he's... Now, I've got the recipe, I've dropped the recipe down the bottom. It's fairly similar. There's a Centennial at 30 minutes, Simcoe, Equinaut and Centennial at 5 minutes. I had Citra instead of Centennial. Hop stands, Equinaut, Simcoe. He has Mosaic instead of Citra and both with Centennial. So he's thrown some Mosaic in there instead of the Citra across the board. The hopping amounts are similar. Mine are actually a little bit lower on the IBUs, and you have a look at that, you'll notice that. By recipe, this comes up to 56 IBU, considerably higher than the 36 that's sitting here and the 36 that this says. But there isn't as much nose. And it does say that he added an extra 10 grams to each of the dry hops. So it's the same size dry hop as this, plus an extra 10 grams. So 30 grams all up, 3 hop dry hop. But you've got a nice head, good carbonation, it's holding the head well. Okay. Now Clint brews with rainwater with no additions, so straight up that's going to give us some difference in the flavour. And my understanding is he ferments old style in a standard fermenter with there's no pressure. Okay, that's lacking in hop flavour. Not a lot, it's just a little bit, actually it's a little bit offish, and I'm going to throw out there that it's the Mosaic. The Mosaic is throwing a more sour note than what the Citra would. That's bloody stirred that sample up. We'll let that sit for a little bit. And there seems to be just a slight, a slight fermentation issue there as well. Could just simply be the water though. It's a little empty. In the body's a bit empty. It's a bit thin. He told me the final gravity on these were 1010, with a 1050 plus starting gravity. So off the recipes, gravity should have been fairly similar to where I was. I could run a bloody hide over it, but I'm not going to. Anyway, I think that might just be the issue. It might just be that water. Okay, and this is the same. It's a bit less. The hops are just pulled down a little bit. Now, this batch he said the 10-minute and hop stands at flame out. Now they're 5-minute editions, so he should be meant the 5-minute editions. And the hop stand, he just dropped them in at flame out, and then, well, I'm assuming he's just cooled. And actually it says the same on both of them. No 80-minute hop stand, or 80, I think it means 20-minute, the 80-degree hop stand. Number 3 hops out of the 80. Yeah, so I think what he's done is he's just dropped everything at flame out, and it's showing in the hops. They're just not quite up where they are here. Okay. That's got a little bit of lift in the body from all the hops coming back further, but the intensity has dropped. It's pushed it from this sort of lower end IPA sort of level down into a pale ale sort of territory. They're a lot lighter. They're a bit, and I think it's across both. The hop profile is a little bit lighter and say brighter. I've always found the Crankshaft to be it's a weird way of putting it, but a dark hop flavour. And just meaning it doesn't have that lift, it doesn't have that brightness in the hops. It is feeling just a little bit brighter than I remember it. But that, I believe, comes down to the change they've made from the original recipe. The first time I went to bench spoke, and I'm pretty positive, I would bet money on this one, and there's recipes getting around that would back it up. This was originally bittered with EKG, as were a lot of their beers quite early on, and there's still a few that still are. Not many, but a couple of the older ones still are. The Red Nut still is, and their bitter still is. But I am positive that the Crankshaft was originally with EKG for the bittering, which I think probably add a little bit more of that sort of that dark vibe. I do remember it being quite a deepish sort of hop feel. Not being quite as bright as it is now. So yeah, I mean that's definitely lighter in the hop taste than it's been than I certainly remember it being. I'm struggling to get a bloody reading here without. Oh no, that's getting us there without degassing. That's. Yeah, so that's sitting 10, 10, 10, 12. So we're in the right ballpark of around a 1055, 1056. Well, 1054 to 1056 is your starting gravity. So that's right. So the malt build, the malt amount, it's good. This colouring here, I said the colouring here is spot on. And I think the malt itself is probably fairly close. Yeah, I think that is certainly struggling water-wise. I think the water itself is just too light, and it's not giving the backbone for everything else. Would be very interesting to see those with some mineral additions. And Clint, that's certainly something I'd be looking at now. As I said, I don't know how long Clint's been brewing for, what the depth of his brewing, is. But coming from no rainwater, you can really feel the difference. And I know from myself, from the difference it made not using minerals and chemicals in the water to actually doing them, and the difference it made in the beer. And I think that would really help there. I think he's got the hops fairly right, and as I said, the hops are very similar to what I've used here. A little bit of difference on the Simcoe and the Citra, and I do still think the Citra is definitely more correct than the Mosaic. So it's just a little bit more. There's no sour note on that, and I'm pretty sure that sour note is going to come from looking what's there. And there's no sour note there. That is, I think that is very, very close. So I think, yeah, Citra is definitely the go instead of the Mosaic. So that's something to look at, Clint, for sure. The water. As I said, we've got no doubt about it that, yeah, 10, 10, 10, 12 is your target gravity, so 1054 is right. So the malt bill here, I said, I think this is very close, and the malt bill is, that was brewed by Clint. Now Clint has varied it up a little bit because he didn't have the exact malts that Stas had, but it's bloody, these printouts on bloody Brewfather, they only give you one line, so if it doesn't fit on the line there in the fermentables, you don't get it. So we're losing the percentages of a lot of the malts. Which is really fucking painful. But anyway, let's quickly find it so I can actually give you. So I just want to quickly run through. I will link. I said I will link up the recipe down the bottom, so you're going to get hold of it. No problem. You can look at it. But I just want to run through this because I think this is actually. I think you've got the malt bill really close. And I just want to sort of compare that to over here. Like I said, I really think there's a ferment issue here. The other thing I do have to look at here is the Voyager malt. I have had issue with the Voyager malt, and I use Atlas in my recipe with this sort of flavour. I had the same thing with the Hells, which was Atlas. Now, this is almost becoming almost a regular thing with the Voyager malts. I've never had the issue before since going to Voyager. This is something I'm going to really need to look at this, because now doing this, I'm really concerned it's actually that the Atlas malts themselves are playing a part. But anyway, as brewed, this is, and this isn't exactly what he gave me. Clint gave me a quick rundown of the recipe via Messenger on Facebook. So these may not be exactly right, but it's the closest I could get with the information he gave me. 83.3% Joe White Pilsner. Now, again, I don't know what bench spoke use. I do know they use a bit of Voyager, but I do know they also use Vitamin, and who knows what else. But in this case, 83.3% of Pilsner. There's 6.5% of a dark Munich. Now I've gone with Barrett Burster because Clint's listed them as dark and light Munich. Now that's not necessarily a description you find real easily on Munich. You get Munich 1, Munich 2, and the Carras. But that's 6.5% each of Barrett Burston Dark Munich and Barrett Burston Munich. Which again would work because they're Aussie malts. He's got some light crystal at 2.2% and a dark crystal at 1.5. Now I've gone for Gladfield because they're the malts I could find that match those descriptions. The recipe gave me 13.8 EBC. I don't know what the Crankshaft is, but going off the expected colour from Brewfather, which is there, looks pretty fucking close to me. That's, so I think the colour's right. So that there is very close. The recipe lists 5-minute boil and the hop stand. I think if you were to follow this, now I will link this in the bottom as comes up as Stats Crankshaft. I will leave that one linked as that, so you can follow that link. Because I think by actually putting the hops into as they're meant to be, but replacing that mosaic with the Citra, I think you're going to get very close. That being said, I think this is very close. About that weird little bit. The Atlas comes up at 4 EBC. It's a little bit darker. I think perhaps that's where we're coming out. The Munich comes from, again, is from Voyager. It sits at 17, it's 17.25. It balances up. And I use medium crystal, which on its own, looking at the numbers here, really maybe should not have added too much extra colour. So I do think there's just a little bit of a ferment issue there, or whatever it is. But for now, I'd certainly say get away from the Voyager malt for this one. Joe White, even go a Wayman, a Gladfield, even a Simpsons Lager malt if you can find it. There's something that's around that in the low 3 EBCs. The Atlas from Voyager is 4. It says 3 to 4. So it could be pushing a little bit higher. But anyway, have we hit it? No, we haven't. But what I'm looking at is there's a couple of recipes I certainly would recommend if you want to knock yourself out. Your own version of a crankshaft. The Code Monkey recipe itself, which is where Pig-Den based his recipe, I think is going to get you closer to that colour. 15.8 EBC, and I think that's more there, which is a little bit too dark. I've got to say, I think Pig-Den has really gone fairly close with that recipe. I played around with his hops a little bit. It's not exactly to his recipe. No, actually it is his recipe. Yeah, it actually is. Pretty close, pretty well spot on. He uses best malt, Pilsen malt, Gladfield Munich and Gladfield Medium. So the only difference really is that base malt. So I think getting that base malt down would certainly help. So if you're looking to do a crankshaft, give Pig-Den's recipe a go. It's gonna get you very close. There you go. That's fun. Google has me listed as a brewery on Google because I have the YouTube channel. Even though my Facebook page says I'm not a business, people ring looking to come to the brewery. I mean, that's one thing. One should open a brewery. But anyway, going off what I've got there, I said that is very close to Pig-Den's recipe. My recipe that I've done, the only difference was I changed those malts to match up with what I've got. I think that is the recipe to follow. Get that malt down. The flavours are certainly there. Is it going to get you an exact clone? I don't think so. It's going to get you very close. Certainly close enough that if you're a fan of the crankshaft, you're gonna be very happy. Clint, mate, thank you very much for these beers. They're both quite tasty. I'll have a chat to you. I'll have a chat to Clint on the side about these. But I said this certainly shows for me the importance of getting on with getting your water additions and your minerals into your beer. Clearly making a good beer. He's got a good profile. It's nice. He's got nice foam. He's got nice head retention. No apparent ferment. There's no noticeable fermentation issues with either of those beers. They're just lacking that final touch. And I've said it before, that final touch is those minerals. So, all good. So, Clint, thanks, mate. Sorry we haven't really got a clear answer, but I think we've found that the Pig-Den's recipe is a good recipe. If you're into your crankshaft, give it a whirl. As a not really my favourite beer, made it quite abundantly clear before, I certainly prefer, I think this Ben Spoke Sprocket is a much better beer than this one. But as far as the masses go, that's an IPA of substance. It's not in your face and over the top. It's enough that, yeah, anyone can sort of sit back, yeah, and drink and enjoy. So, guys, that's Little John's Crankshaft attempt. Barring whatever's just gone slightly awry there, hopefully we've all learnt something. Comments and questions down the bottom. Do you brew Crankshaft? What recipe do you use? Can you input a little bit to the conversation? I know we've dragged this out, and I hope you have stuck around to see how we went. I know it's been long and drawn out, but hey, it's Friday afternoon. What's it really matter? Links are all down the bottom. Until I see you again, when we're brewing beer, drinking beer, or talking beer, good brewing.